Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. Just a disclaimer, if you hear a baby crying in the background, my neighbors, they're so awesome. They have a new baby, so baby's gonna baby. So if you hear a little squeak in the background, that's it. I don't have a baby. Let's not make assumptions. Now, I'm doing a part 2 to the career advice I wish I knew earlier. If you want to see that video where I kind of break down what are some of the advice I wish someone would have told me before I started my career, or as I was starting my career, that would have helped me. And I've linked it in the description below. So this is part 2. It's more of a survival corporate baddie guide. So whether you're working in an office or you're working remotely like moi, these tips they'll work regardless. You just have to tweak them based on whether you're there virtually or physically, but they are super important. And I've also, because I love sharing advice and just tips and TikToks with people in general, I've also linked 3 TikTokers that I personally follow for career advice, professional advice, and just advice overall, and just being creative and being somebody who wants to have like a really healthy balance, work-life balance or life-work balance in the mix. So you can also see that in the description below as well. If you also have any career tips or advice or survival tips for my corporate, remote, or in-person baddies that you did not hear in this video or you really resonated with, comment below. And don't forget to subscribe, because your girl's slowly building her channel. She's doing her thing, you know what I mean? Gotta support her. Okay, so without further ado, here we go. Number 1, keep a work journal. I have a work journal. I started this last year. I wish I had started earlier in my career. Work journal is so good. I also mentioned this in my previous video because it's so helpful. I actually have a performance review coming up in the next couple of weeks. And the great thing about having a work journal is I can look back through the months on all of the key tasks that I've been a part of, I've accomplished, and some of the kudos as well. That's been great. Key tip, if you want to make like a log of kudos, but kudos, like people are like, oh my God, great job, Victoria. Oh my God, couldn't have done it without you, XYZ. One of the best things you could do, just side note, is if you are in a company that has emails, save those emails, save those replies, right? Because you can use them in your performance review as proof. If you're on Slack, at yourself and find all the comments that people do were like, great job, thank you, XYZ, and just save those in a folder. 1, it's great performance review and just to like show what you've been doing and how you're appreciating the company. And 2, sometimes it's like a little affirmation folder that kind of, when you're down and you're like, oh my God, I'm not getting any work done, I don't feel appreciated, go in that little folder, read it over, and it kind of helps you. I digress, but keep a journal, whether digitally or physically. I'm old school, so I have a physical book, like physical pen and paper that I write down the items in. Maybe that will change as I go along. I'm thinking I might be an iPad girl. I'm not there yet. Who knows? But keep a journal. Next, have it in writing. I learned this from one of my toxic jobs, or multiple toxic jobs, is that you have to have it in writing. When somebody's like, oh, can you do this task? Can you complete this, or XYZ? Ask them to send you an email. If you're talking on Slack, ask them to reiterate what they asked you to do, or what they're telling you to do, or what they agreed to do, so that if something comes up, you can go back to that message and be like, this is what I was told, this is the chain of evidence. And likewise, you want to make sure that you're on you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's, because maybe that person's doing that, you want to make sure that you're also on the good side of whatever that conversation is. But definitely have it in writing. If your manager's like, oh, you're doing great, I'm thinking that I might want to give you a promotion on the call, send that manager a follow-up message. Say, hey, I'm really glad about the call, you mentioned XYZ, just confirming XYZ. Always find a way to get something in writing, whether you're reiterating and you get the confirmation from the person, and even if the person doesn't reply to your email or your message and it's left unanswered, they were made aware that you had that perception or that mindset and they didn't clear it up. That's on them. So just make sure whatever you need in writing, whether it's a promotion, a change in job, or anything like that. A quick story time for me is that I was told like, oh, can you help to manage like the website team until we find like a manager for them? And I did. And guess what? They did find a manager, and I had to manage the manager while I was managing the website team outside of my day-to-day duties. And because I didn't have that in writing, when my the VP of marketing was like, oh, you know, how could this happen, XYZ, I was like, I told you guys that I wouldn't be able to manage for such a long period of time. And what had happened was, I originally had this conversation on Slack, but because the company decided to delete Slack on a whole, I lost all my messages. And I didn't have anything in writing, and it put me in a difficult position because this person could make up or say anything to make me look bad while all that evidence was gone. So whenever you can, emails, if your company is definitely going to keep Slack for the long run, or try to save your messages as best as possible. Okay, next is your work friend versus your work bestie versus your coworker. Now, these are three distinct categories, and they're three distinct categories for a reason. Your work friend is the friend that you go in with work, and then you got your work bestie. Your work bestie is somebody that you've confided in over the time that you've been together. This person has been your ride and die. Their actions have proven that they're trustworthy and that they're there for you. You guys are eating lunch, you guys are having each other's backs and everything. That's your work bestie. Your work friend is somebody who is more of like a work acquaintance that you guys have a really friendly rapport. You guys talk with each other, but you're not sharing like your life or the deep crevices and corners of your mind with that person, or complaining about work with that person. Versus your coworker, you show up to work, you're like, hey, good morning, XYZ. You have your superficial conversation, you type, and you do what you need to do. You need to be sure that you know which category your coworkers fall into. Because if you think that your coworker is instantly going to be your work friend, or your coworker is instantly going to be your work bestie, that will put you in problems in the long run. And I know a lot of people are like, you're not there to make friends. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you end up making friends that leave the workspace and are now your friends in real life. That happened to me. I worked remotely for another company, and there's somebody who is my work bestie that we would both complain about work together with outside of work channels. And eventually when I moved here to Vancouver, she was the person who I was, also hanging out with periodically and that I could ask for help with. Sometimes that happens. That's not always the case. So just be mindful that you know where each coworker falls. Don't overshare, especially if you are a female. Don't overshare. Again, it's 2023, but we still have gender bias or certain perspectives that are on women, and sometimes on men too, but don't overshare. If you're sick and you're calling in sick, you don't have to tell them, oh my God, I got in a car crash on this intersection and this is what happened to my car and XYZ. Tell them, I got into an accident. I'll send you the doctor's note later if you have to send a doctor's note. If you need a day off, hey, I'm going on vacation. You don't need to give a reason why you're going on your paid vacation. It's in your contract, you're allowed to. So don't overshare. And likewise, when you're at lunch, work events, or even just in the office, you can share enough, but you don't need to share. Don't overshare. Like, don't share what you're going through. Don't share certain family information. Just share what's needed. Okay, so for this next tip, it's a little bit long. I don't know why I wrote it this long. It says, doing more work doesn't equal pay or recognition. Like I said, sometimes when you're promoted, it's not always about more work that you do. And likewise, doing more work doesn't always equal more pay or recognition. If you were, let's say, you were paid and you were brought into the company to wear a blue hat, but you decided you're gonna wear a red hat and a yellow hat to prove to them that you deserve a promotion, you deserve this leadership promotion. And instead of moving, vertically, you're moving horizontally, or you're getting more tasks, you're in a position where you're doing 3 jobs for one pay. And because you've been doing it for a long time, to prove that you can handle it, to prove that you deserve the recognition, to prove that you're a valuable asset to the company, why would the company pay you more or even remove you from that position where you've become so vital just so that they can replace you, blue, red, yellow hat with somebody who's just going to wear one hat? So again, sometimes more work does not equal more pay or recognition. So I would say work smartly. For me personally, I learned this the hard way. And I learned, yes, there are times when you have to go above and beyond, but not all the time. So I make sure I do the work that I'm supposed to be doing, and I make sure I try to do it to the best of my abilities. And then if something comes up and I have the capacity to handle it, then I can put it on my radar. Sometimes I don't, and sometimes I do, and sometimes, again, I just let them know I have more important things to do right now, but I can get to it at a later date. So keep that in mind. Work languages. I spoke about this in my previous video. I'm very excited about it. I really should do a video on it, but just like how you have love languages where you have acts of service, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, and physical touch, that also translates into your work life as well. Hear me out. Just like how you have different personalities, people with different backgrounds, people have different ways that they want to be recognized, communicated with, or engaged with, so that you can have a great working relationship with them. For some people, get my phone, acts of service. They want you to help them with a project. Sometimes they want you to go, like, hey, do you want me to organize these sheets for you to help you to do this? It could be a team member, it could be a coworker, it could be somebody from a different department that you want to get in good graces with. That may be what they need your help with. Or 2, words of affirmation. Some people just need to be told that they're doing a good job, they're great, or that you value them, and that is speaking their work language, and that in turn helps you to have a good working relationship. Next is quality time. Some people just want to talk, whether it's in person, whether you work in person or you work virtually. Some people, their work language is like just talking with you and just talking about nonsense, non-work related things or work related things, but talking to you is their work language. And you talking with them means that you care about them or you're showing interest in them and that you value them. Again, very important if you want to have a good workplace relationship, if you're looking to be promoted, finding out what your manager or your leadership is work language is like, figuring that out can also help you to crack that code. Gifts. And when I say gifts, I don't mean go out and buy people watches. Sometimes a little like Amazon gift card or a little Starbucks, bringing back a Starbucks or a coffee or something really simple but easy to manage on your pocket. Giving that person shows, again, is speaking their work language and makes it easier for you, for them to work with you and for you to work with them. And they'll also be more open to helping you with things, even if it's outside of their scope. Last but not least is physical touch. If you're in an office, an HR appropriate physical touch. If you're in an office, some people actually like a handshake or a hand on their shoulder, like a quick hand, not a creepy, lingering, just like, oh, hey, morning. Some people are like that. Some people, their love language of physical touch transcends into their work language. And if you work remotely, you're screwed. You can find some other work language that they probably have that second tier that you can use to connect with them. If you're in the office, you can use it as well. I don't remember where it is, but I do know that someone said like when you're talking to somebody or when you want to keep someone engaged, touching them occasionally also helps to keep them present in the moment. I can't quote where it is exactly, but I will drop it in the description and find it to kind of show you what I'm trying to say so you can see the correct information. So don't quote me on this, but that's sort of the premise. My cat just walked in. Okay. Next is, you won't like everyone you work with, but you do have to find a way to work with them. So I learned when I was working in my marketing agency days, and I worked for a couple of marketing agencies in Jamaica, is that He's just such a drama queen. And so I've worked with a lot of marketing agencies, and one thing I've learned is that you're not gonna like everyone that you work with. And again, even if you haven't worked in a marketing agency, wherever you are, you're gonna encounter that. It could be your boss, it could be a team member, sometimes it could even be a client. But one workaround is find something that you respect about them, right? My cat is also eating his food now, and he's a little collar that's very dingy, so if you hear that in the background, it's just him. And so find something that you respect about them. Find something that they're really good at that maybe you're not even good at too. It could be something work related, it could be their personality, it could be the way their synergy with people. Find something that you respect about them and hone in on that, right? Hone in on that. You can either use that as a way to use that to your advantage, as a way to get to know them and kind of build a bridge between them. Because sometimes we have this premise like, oh, this person, I don't like this person. But then when we hone in on like the things that their talent and their skills and the things that we really respect about them, it can open the conversation to get to know who this person is. And you'll either appreciate the person a little bit more, hate them a little less, or you might find a justifiable reason as to why you really don't like them. But which moves on to number 2, which is having professional boundaries. Keep it professional. Don't let personal get in the way, even though not liking someone is a personal thing. But what I'm saying is, if you have your work hours and if you're in a meeting, be respectful to the other person. If you guys are talking or having communication, make sure it's respectful and professional. If they notice that when you talk to other colleagues, you're a little bit more casual, but when you talk to them, you're more professional, that's okay. Stick to that. Just let them know that, measure of respect or whatever it is, you can phrase it so it, comes across as it just is what it is. And then the going into like keeping it professional is having boundaries. If this person is doing things that you don't like, try to have strict boundaries. If this person is calling you after work hours, tell them, hey, I don't answer my phone after work hours. If you're not in a position to do that because maybe you're new to the job or you're not in a senior position, just don't answer your phone. Literally, don't answer your phone. And the next day, you're like, I didn't see the call. You keep doing that for a while and they're gonna get the message not to call you after a certain time. So have boundaries, and I talk about boundaries a little bit more in my first video. Again, link in the description. Go in there. I have the little timestamps in case you want to just jump to that section. You can do that. You can do that. You don't have to watch the entire video. Okay, so the next one is be aware of office politics. So this is one of my favorite topics. So whenever you join a new workplace, there is always going to be office politics. It doesn't matter if you're a startup, it doesn't matter if you're an enterprise level company, there is always some level of drama, social hierarchy, or just some undertones that you need to be aware of. For example, if somebody from Department A doesn't like somebody from Department B, and they both end up on a project, and that project fails because of office politics, being aware of that before the project even starts and having things in place to either let them work together properly, separate them, or just find some way for you guys to just finish the project to the best of your abilities or successfully, knowing office politics can help. What I've learned is it's always important to listen to the things that people say and the things that people don't say. And again, this is why I said no office politics, but don't be a part of it. Because again, as soon as you join an organization, whether you intend to or not, somebody is going to try to pull you into the mess. Okay? Stay away from the mess. See the mess, know the mess, get whatever information you can by being present, by being socially aware and listening and looking at those social cues, whether it's physical, whether it's verbal, or whether it's non-verbal, whatever it is, just being aware of that helps you. One, it's going to help you to know if there are kind of like any groups, if there are people who don't like working with each other that you're going to have to encounter. And it's also going to let you know how certain social groups or hierarchies work and how you fit into that, so that you can be at your best, work at your best, and also get the most out of it. Again, be aware of the office politics. Do not be naive to it, because when you're naive to office politics, that is when you are the most exposed and you are at a big disadvantage, because you may agree with somebody or work with somebody that your office or somebody who's in a higher level or a manager or a certain department or whatever it may be may not like, and that person may sabotage you. Now, this is not to say that you should be hopping, skipping, and bending to everyone's will. What I am trying to tell you is to be like water. Know where to flow, know where to stop, and know what form of water you need to be in order for you to thrive in that environment. If you're in a work environment where the office politics is just way too much, and you just trying to work in there is like doing yoga moves every single second, maybe you should leave. But if you're socially aware, you know how to handle yourself, you love the job that you're in, navigating through the office politics is going to also be to your advantage, because you're going to know who to speak to when you need help, who to go to when you need a certain situation to be fixed, and who can be your mediator, as well as what you say and what you shouldn't say to certain people in order for you to advance in your career. So there's a plus, there's a pro, and then there's a con to office politics, but being aware of it is the most important. Again, don't be pulled into it. Don't add to the gossip. Don't add to the drama. Just try to be as Switzerland, as neutral as possible. Sometimes you can't, so try and pick the best side or find the best opportunity that you can. Oh, next up is HR is not your friend. Now, whether you agree with this or not, just know HR, the person or the people in HR, are employees that are hired by the company to manage the employees. They are the employees of the company. So whether their personal moral standing, right, whether they agree with you personally, professionally, they have to do what's best for their job. They have to do what's best for the company that they work for, because the company is paying them to do whatever they need to do in the company's best interest. So while you're working, just remember, HR is not your friend. Even if you work with a super friendly, amazing HR person, because I've met some people who are just like, they're apple pie. They're just delicious and sweet and amazing. But at the end of the day, you have to know, as sweet as apple pie is, it can still give you diabetes, whether it meant to or not. Okay? So be your own HR person while you're at work. Don't rely on HR to remind you when your contract's coming up, remind you to use your benefits, or anything like that. You have to pepper HR with questions so that you're equipped with whatever you need to know. You need to make sure that you review your contracts, review your terms and conditions, so that you're on top of everything. You're reviewing company regulations that have to do with employee standing if it comes down to it. And again, especially with HR, I know I said this before, always get things in writing. When it comes to HR, always get it in writing. Doesn't matter how small of a change is, how small of a request it is, always get it in writing. If you had a conversation with your manager or with your team lead and they're like, oh, we'll talk about a raise on our next performance review, you make sure when you send that follow-up email to them, you CC HR, or you send a letter to HR, or you let your team leader know, like, hey, can HR be a part of this conversation, just to make sure that the next time it comes around, whether, maybe you're promoted and you move to another position or whatever might happen, that this conversation is on the record. Make sure you are your own HR person. Okay, be on top of things. And then last but not least, my favorite, and I spoke about this on my LinkedIn post, which is ask the right questions. I used to think when I started, asking questions meant that I didn't know what I was doing. They were gonna think I'm unprofessional. They're gonna think like I like they're gonna fire me. Like, those are some of the thoughts I had if I asked questions. And then when I started to do work without getting the information, it would backfire. And I was like, oh, I assumed, or I XYZ, and it definitely didn't play into my favor. Ask questions. Asking questions is not only important, but it shows initiative. It also shows that you care about the work that you're doing and that you're showing like, I want to get it correct, right? So asking questions, good start. Start asking questions. And the more you start working, the more you realize what are some of the right questions to ask, right? What are the questions that are going to be the most productive for me, the most productive for this meeting, and the most productive for the team? And sometimes especially if you're not the smartest person in the room, and it does happen, like if it's not your department, if it's not your niche, if it's not your specialty, and you have somebody who's talking, ask questions. Because being able to know something on your end also helps you in the long run, right? Like if somebody is super analytical, but you are more on the customer side, and you said, okay, so how can I check a metric that's going to help me with XYZ? You don't know the answer. This person probably knows the answer, and it's going to benefit you. Ask questions. Okay. I've learned, and one of the things that I have actually been pushing my team to do is ask me questions. And there's a big difference with an employee who is an expert, who is seasoned, when they ask you questions and then they take the answers to those questions and they apply it to their work. Seeing that as a manager, seeing that as someone, it's like, oh my God, mwah, chef's kiss. Whereas if I have somebody who is just as seasoned, but they're not asking questions, they're just doing things along the way, and then we end up having to go over things. It's like, what happened? Like, oh, I didn't know XYZ. And it's like, talk to me. Of course, not every manager is like that. Not every company is going to be happy for you to ask questions. And most likely that's not a company you want to be a part of. You want to be in an environment where if you ask specific, justified questions that are going to make sure that you know your role, you know the scope of your project, you know the expectations that you want to meet, that is a company you want to be a part of. That's a manager you want to have. And if you don't have that and you're kind of you want to still stay in the job for whatever circumstances, find a community, go on LinkedIn, ask a question, like ask people questions, and you'd be surprised how many people are going to respond back to you, right? You have TikTok now, you can find some of the answers to your question. You have Google, you have YouTube, and there are also, there's a very loud seagull. There are also like so many other people that you may know or may know of that are definitely going to help. So ask questions. Okay, so those were all of these survival tips, the career advice part 2. If you have a tip that I did not mention or something you want to add a little extra to or share a little story, drop it down in the comment and let me know. I'm more than happy. I'd be more than happy to read all of them. And I'm really excited. This is going to be a little series on like a little work series. If you guys have any questions or something you want me to make a video on, drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and share with somebody who might need this video. I'm excited. So I'll see you guys in the next video.